I know there's so many crises at the moment, aren't there? There's the energy crisis, there's now a law and order crisis. But do you think, and I think I know the answer to this having watched your show tonight, but do you think it's time for the government to finally declare these illegal migrant crossings a national emergency?
Yes, Dan, I do. I think this is much deeper than a crisis. And I'll tell you why. The numbers crossing the Mediterranean are running this year at double the number of last year. And ask yourself a question, where do they want to go? What other European country gives them a 4-star hotel room? What other European country gives them dental care, medical care, 3 square meals a day, 38 quid a week spending money, and the chance to work in the illegal economy? They all want to come here. Yesterday was $12.95. I promise you, Dan, you ain't seen nothing yet. Why do I say that? Because yesterday, the lifeboats were mobilised from Ramsgate to Eastbourne. That's only the second time Eastbourne has been mobilised. That is a 63-mile stretch of the British coastline that was on full alert yesterday for illegal migrant crossings. And the numbers are going to go absolutely through the roof. Now we know a huge number of them are young Albanian men, intent very clearly on working in the illegal economy in this country. Is it an emergency for law and order? Yes. Or the ability, if the population explodes, for your kids to get a house? Yes. For your ability to get a GP appointment? Yes. But most important of all, and forgotten and ignored by the rest of the media, the clarion call that ISIS made in 2014, just before the Mediterranean crossing started, where they said, we are not confined just to these countries in the Middle East. We will spread our operatives via these routes into Europe and take on all of the disbelievers. Now, you can, if you want, ignore ISIS, or you could look at the barbarities that happened in Paris that night a few years ago. Appalling barbarities. 5 of the 8 men that did it crossed the Mediterranean. We are now letting in tens of thousands of undocumented young males. They throw their passports, their mobile phones into the English Channel. We cannot track who they are. We cannot see whether they've got serious criminal records. We are becoming a much less safe country as a result of this. And that's why this is now an emergency. But of course, ignored by Boris Johnson, who is spending his last few days on holiday in Greece or at Chequers. I mean, Theresa May I didn't like, but she spent her last few days pushing through issues that she actually cared about. Priti Patel, well, pretty useless, I think, is the summation of her time as Home Secretary. And the funny thing is, I interviewed tonight Stephen Kinnock, shadow Labour immigration minister. He has nothing to say, other than we'll crack down on the gangs and reduce the crossings. This is something.
How? Because I watched that interview, Nigel, and, OK, all well and good that you say you're against the Rwanda plan. What is your plan, Labour? And nothing was forthcoming from him when you pressed him on that.
No, it was to crack the criminal gangs. And yes, let's be absolutely frank about this. The National Crime Agency did last month arrest 39 people, crack a big gang, and the numbers that came in July were fewer than I thought they would be. But when you can make millions of euros every single week, there's always somebody to plug that gap. So we have no government, no opposition. Most of London doesn't care. Most of the media doesn't care. GBNews, the People's Channel, we've led the way on all of this. We've led the way on the stories, led the way on the predictions. I promise you one thing. We will not deal with this issue until we get a proper Brexit. And a proper Brexit means, free of European courts, free of judges or jurists as they are in Strasbourg. It's going to need very firm leadership to deal with. And I know we've got a cost of living crisis, inflation rocketing, all of those things. But I'll tell you this issue alone will lose the Conservatives, the Red Wall. These people, ex-Labour people, they voted UKIP actually to begin with, but they voted Brexit. They voted for the Conservatives in 2019. To them, Brexit was about taking back control of our borders more than any other single issue. And we are being made an international laughingstock on this very question. So, Liz Truss, if you're going to win, deal with it. Do not rely on Dominic Raab's British Bill of Rights. It's not worth a row of beans. We're still signed up by international treaty to European courts. That is what must be dealt with. And I tell you something, I feel as much public support for my stance on this building up as I felt on the initial question of leaving the European Union. This is big.
And you're also right, Nigel, to raise the threat of Islamic extremism, because it hasn't gone away. And, again, it's something that just hasn't been spoken about for far too long. Nigel, I did want to touch on lawless Britain, though, as well, because what we're seeing on our streets at the moment also feels unprecedented. There's a breakdown of society going on. The police, it feels like the woke police in lots of parts of the country have actually lost control of the streets.
Yeah, give it up completely. I mean, look, 50 youths ran in, ransacked, robbed a McDonald's in Nottingham.
Yep.
It's not a one-off.
No.
It's not a one-off. We saw this in Oxford Street a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
But here's the remarkable thing. 50 young men go in, cause mayhem, not one arrest. Not one single arrest. I mean, you simply could not make this up. Now, why is that? Could it just be to do with the ethnicity of those that conducted that outrage? And I think I've drawn my own conclusion. And it says to me, the police are now full-on cowards. They're playing the PC game. They're playing the non-binary gender game. They're not dealing with serious lawlessness on our streets. And, we're showing this video now here on GB News, but this is going around everywhere. The signal is clear. Go out and rob. Go out and break the law. Nothing will happen to you. I mean, frankly, if this isn't gripped, our cities will become unlivable. And I worry sometimes, is it too late? Have we lost? And then I'm reminded of my friend Rudy Giuliani. Dear old Rudy. Now, he may be knocking on a bit. He might have made a couple of mistakes in the 2020 presidential election and afterwards. But when I first went to New York, Dan, in the 80s, in business, I remember you wouldn't leave a bar or a restaurant without the taxi waiting. And you'd worry about that cricket pitch length you had to go to get in that car. And you did it as quickly as you could, and you got out. New York was terrifying. And one man with courage, conviction, leadership, unafraid of being called, all the names under the sun, made New York safer than London. So I haven't yet given up on Britain's cities, but time is running short.
Well, yeah, we need our own version, don't we, of the 2 strikes and you're out policy. We need actual tough sentencing. Plus, we need to knock this woke madness out of the police, because I think you're right to talk about the fears the police have to deal with certain ethnic groups. I mean, we've seen that with the grooming gangs, Nigel, another story that GB News covers and the rest of the media seems to turn a blind eye to.
Yeah, I was fascinated. Rotherham, I actually discovered this week a newspaper article about grooming from 1973. 1973.
Been going on that long.
That's how long. That's how long this has been going on. Look, what we need is one thing, and one thing only, and it's called leadership. Now, I know you're backing Liz Truss to be the next Prime Minister. You're a man of wonderful faith in people, Dan, I have to say.
Nigel, we've got to have faith. Come on, we've got to have some faith.
No. I agree with you. I hope, for the sake of the national interest, that Dan Wootton's bullish optimism about Liz Truss's ability to be bold and brave and take on these issues is right. I just fear that Nigel Farage's scepticism and cynicism may well prove to be...
She's not another Theresa May, Nigel. We, as a country, like in all seriousness, as a country, we cannot afford for her to be another Theresa May. It would be a complete disaster for this country.
I agree.